be there.
Okay, we're recording now.
He's somewhere. God, Lord knows where.
All right, so I'll give the meeting opening. Thank you
Okay.
for joining the City of Kingston's Complete Streets Advisory Council. Today is February 10th, 2021. My name is Greg Krupp, the Complete Streets Liaison and organizer for our virtual meetings. Before our meeting begins, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines to help us navigate this system as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that members of the public and press remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. As organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. Committee members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a committee member or staff wishes to speak, they should raise their hands. The chairperson will call on them before they speak by stating their name clearly for our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be available to the public on the city's website at a later date. You can submit written comments to the City of Kingston Clerk Elisa Tinty at emtinty@kingston-ny.gov or by dropping them off at the drop box located outside the side door of City Hall. We also encourage people to reach out to committee chairs. If you have any audio issues, send a text to the following number, 845-418-9634. That's my number. I will repeat this number again, but be aware that phone calls will not be answered, just text. So it's 845-418-9634. As organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who behaves inappropriate. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance our chair, Bob Dennison, vice chair, John Grossbolin, committee members, Claudette Ford. We have city staff, myself, Greg Krupp, and Kristen Wilson, and public, we have Lorraine Farina. Thank you for your patience during these difficult times, and on behalf of the Complete Streets Advisory Council, I wish you good health. I now turn the floor over to Bob Dennison.
Well done, Greg. That's you're getting good at that. It's really
Better
good.
every time.
So the first order of business is welcome guests. Welcome, Lorraine. And if you have any public comment, now would be your opportunity, or you can wait till later. At the Kingston Land Bank, we are now doing public comment at the beginning and at the end, because people find that they discover stuff during the meeting that they want to talk about, so we let them do that. So what we could do
no,
here.
thank you. I have none right now, so I'll mute myself.
Okay. A review and approval of the minutes of our last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Anybody have any corrections or comments?
No, they look good.
Greg did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Okay, given that there are no corrections or comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstainers? Okay, the minutes are adopted. That's good. Old business, education. We put this on here because there was lots of conversation about what's going on with the city as far as talking about education with bicycle paths and shared roadways and stuff like that. I don't know, Kristen, do you know anything about that, or are we?
Yeah, I wanted to give you guys an update on what we're doing at the city
Sounds good.
in preparation for the Broadway opening. And so we've been developing what we're calling a road user education campaign along with city staff and a couple of people from the county and a couple of people from the Kingston Land Trust have chimed in here and there. So over the last 3 months, essentially we held about three meetings, and we were focused on brainstorming really all of the different ideas that could be part of an education campaign that would be focused on, the goal would be to educate. Actually, I'm going to pull it up and just tell you. Let's see here. The goal of the campaign would be to raise awareness within the traveling public of about traffic laws that ensure the safety of everyone, to notify people about the change in traffic patterns on Broadway, to notify people how to properly use the infrastructure, and also share about the benefits of the project and the changes made to the road. So that, the purpose of this is really to inspire behavior change among the traveling public that will result in a safer environment and more understanding of the new infrastructure, and ultimately, hopefully prevent crashes, especially during the adoption period of the new infrastructure. So we've developed some ideas, and I put together a draft scope of work for said campaign, and we are seeking, I guess, how can I put this? We're seeking funding at the same time as figuring out how can we get this implemented if we don't have funding. So it seems with the scope of work that I put together for a potential like marketing consultant, we estimated maybe around $36,000. And it seems like we will have at least $5,000 through the Ulster County Transportation Council to assist with this. And the mayor is interested in going to the council for more funding or finding other ways to get this funded. Essentially we would be, my hope is that we can get a marketing consultant that would be able to like develop the campaign plan and the branding and the language and the graphics, so that then we would disseminate through lots of different channels, whether it's social media or ads on a UCAT bus or some radio spots during drive time, a web page that's sort of the landing page for all of the information. And so I think we've put together a relatively good plan, and now we just have to figure out how we're going to fund it or how much we're willing to stretch staff capacity to make it happen. And I'm happy to share drafts of the plan with Complete Streets Advisory Council members. And if you have any ideas about how you might assist or be able to plug in to getting the information out once we have it developed, I just want to let everybody know that that's where we're at.
Okay.
That's good. I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Kristen. Is it expandable beyond the Broadway corridor? Because it's more of a universal. Can this be a universal? Again, I say that because of the Empire State Trail crash and, the fact that there's changes with signals throughout the city. Is there an opportunity here to broaden it?
Oh, I definitely think there is, and that would be kind of part of the logo or brand development. I was thinking that this could be something that could be scalable to like the county, and scalable to talking about, safety at trail crossings, or I don't know what other issues New Paltz or Ellenville, what other communities might have, but being able to use the sort of like same graphics and branding and logo across the county eventually. But for us, for the city of Kingston, we really want to focus it specifically on focus the activities, the actual, delivery of the content on the city of Kingston and the people who will be utilizing, and the target audience would be probably people within like a 50-mile radius of Kingston who might be coming here to work. So that, I think or at least my thinking is that it's not the first protected bike lane in Ulster County, because Greenkill Ave was the first one,
Yep.
but it's the first one that that the city and the county have been really involved in on the design. That other, it was done by DOT. And so I think we just want to do a very good job at explaining how this infrastructure works, what the benefits are, with the eye towards, we may want to replicate more protected bike lanes, not just on Broadway, but on other streets in Kingston, and also maybe in other communities in Ulster County. And so the success of this infrastructure, I think, is really important for other roads in the city of Kingston and also for Ulster County.
Let me, from a funding perspective, and I guess this would be the city going through Chief Tinty or whoever is our representative on the governor's traffic safety board. It sounds to me like the kind of thing the governor's traffic safety board could fund. And, we did talk to him about getting a seat on that for the Complete Streets Advisory Council, which really has not panned out. I don't know whether they're reluctant to share the joy of being on the traffic safety board, or maybe they're just too busy. But that to me seems like a possible fund source that might be worth exploring.
I can interject there, if I may.
Absolutely.
Kristen.
Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thank you. Sorry I was late. I was on New York State DOT climate panel with Al Gore III, and it was incredibly boring. So I came back here. The Traffic Safety Board has been defunct for the past year, essentially since COVID, and we're trying to get it revived.
Is okay?
The problem with it is that we're looking to essentially transfer the administration to the MPO, so that the MPO would then be essentially acting as staff to the Governor's Traffic Safety Board. That requires an act of the Ulster County Legislature. And so we've been having that discussion through the county executive's office, and it looks like that's moving forward. It's just moving forward at a snail's pace. In the interim, we can look to the GTSB for funding. I don't know what their funding cycle is and what it looks like. And it may not coincide with our project schedules here, but I'm happy to look into that.
Because my sense is that there's money there that's not been well spent or not spent at all over the years. I mean, I've seen some counties do very well, use that money to a great advantage, but some counties don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, in Ulster, it primarily goes to the institute, which is housed at the Ulster County Community College, the Safety Institute. I forget their full name. I think it's called Environmental and Safety Institute. And Rose Quinn is their staff, and she, receives I think it's a relatively meager grant. It's somewhere, I don't know, but it's not huge.
Right.
She does all of her safety outreach efforts through that annual grant. There are probably other categories as well. So it's certainly worth looking into, and I will check on their grant cycle and see if there might be an opportunity there.
And engaging Rose in this is not a bad idea as well. As a staff person, that's kind of what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to, the discussions mostly started with just Ulster County and the city staff for the brainstorm. What's the purpose of this, and what kinds of audiences and channels are we going to potentially utilize? But eventually we need to broaden to all of our partners to help us get the messages out and maybe participate in some of the planning. But we're looking at a timeline of, I think Broadway is supposed to be completed by May. However, I think that is likely going to be pushed forward due to the insertion of the sewer project on Broadway in the middle. Greg, are we looking at maybe a September end date for Broadway, or?
That would be the latest. I think actually their contract end date is in July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it may push out past that. It's up to the contractor. If they bring on more people, they could make their date, but in theory, the sewer project should not delay the streetscape project.
Okay.
Good, good.
So we're looking at, for the campaign, I was thinking of like maybe 1 to 3 months of messaging out in the public. So a month before the project is complete, and then a couple of months during the project adoption time. I mean, obviously once the messaging is out there, we'll have a website, it'll be up there for a long time. But, for the focused radio spots and PSAs and ads and whatever it is we choose to do, that would be for just, a short period of time initially. So ideally we'd be getting a marketing person on board, by March to get that all into place, but we don't have the funding. So
I would love to, for one, I would love to see what you've got. I'd be interested in seeing, your draft stuff when you get a chance, just for interest sake.
yeah, I will forward a Google document link that folks can take a look at.
Great.
And then just so you're aware, down at the bottom of it, there are links to other Google documents where we have kind of all of our brainstorm and, just conglomeration of ideas that came in as we were developing this. And so I can share that with you.
Good. Anybody else have any comments, questions, thoughts?
I have a question. We had discussed changes in the traffic lights where there would be no more traffic signals and there would be like 4-way stops. Is there an education component that could be part of this? Because it is a change in the way most people might approach an intersection. And is there a way of explaining why the traffic signal is either not going to be replaced or installed, and why they need to pay attention to the new traffic?
That's not something that I had put into this particular plan, but I think it's something that could be added if we broaden the target goal or the target audience. Well, the target audience would be the same, but the goal would be a little bit, that would be broadening the goal.
Okay, all right, just was
About
curious.
the intersections in Kingston, right?
Right. Yeah. No, only because if you do end up with a specific, say, logo or branding logo, and I understand why it would be an addition to this particular project or possibly similar to it, that logo would be able to carry out to, this is a traffic related issue, this is something that came from us, this is why, or where you can find information as to why this is happening. So yeah, I just was thinking along those terms. Okay.
I'm wondering though, if that's out into the future so far that people are already used to this 4-way stop signs that we've got. I mean, they seem to be working quite well. In fact, I much prefer them over the lights because people aren't trying to beat the lights by speeding up, and it's easier to cross the streets on foot.
And they're safer.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. I still do get some people who are not happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, it wouldn't be bad to have it in there just so that those that are struggling with the change.
Well,
it works way better, but there are people that are
Yeah.
struggling with it.
yeah, and also because we are getting new people into the city, and a lot of them are coming from places where the intersections are more signalized, and especially because we don't have regulated crosswalks at a lot of the intersections, even though they're 4-way stops or whatever. So it's just a thought. I'm not, and you have to do it right away. But I do know that that still is, for some people, it's a challenge. They're like, why isn't there a traffic light here? Yeah.
Good. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, so if anybody has any other ideas about funding or connections, let me know. Because this will be something I'll be focused on a little bit for the next couple of weeks to try and see if we can get this funded in one way or another.
Well, it's definitely necessary. It's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Bike ped plan update. If there's anything more on that item, without Emily, I don't know. Can we do that?
I can share a little bit. I know, so the initial goal was we have a $60,000 grant, and it has to be matched by $60,000. So I think initially our strategy was to go to council to bond for the match, to then be able to hire a consultant to do the majority of the work. But then during COVID, we felt that the council would be very reluctant to bond. And so we went down another path of finding the match from staff time within city staff, and also some from Ulster County Transportation Council staff. So we have developed that whole plan, and Emily has put together, figured out, which staff would be doing what kinds of tasks and how many hours and all those details. So she's developed a budget and has shared that with the state agency to essentially do a budget amendment and change the way that we're funding the project. So that she just communicated and within the last month to the state agency, which is the Department of Environmental Conservation. And looks like we're moving forward with that contract amendment. And in the meantime, Emily's getting ready to start working on the project and moving it forward. Her next step is to do an RFP for I think it's either 50 or 60,000. I think it's 60,000 that we have available for a consultant. So that's her next step. And one thing that came up when Emily and I met about it is that I felt we need to do more education in the community about complete streets again. So, aside from road safety or utilizing it, I think that I'm just taking a read on what I'm seeing on Facebook, but I think there's a real lack of just education about what complete streets are in the community. And I think we would benefit from kind of redoing what we did several years ago, where we had some conferences for our elected officials. We had like the Ulster County Active Transportation Conference. And we had a lot of discussion about what are these design principles and what are these design options. And I think that we've lost a little bit of that because those elected officials who were educated through those conferences have now gone on, and we have new elected officials. So I think that there's just a need to re-educate. I don't know if re-educate's the right word, but share the information again.
Is there an opportunity here for us to fold complete streets education into an education piece for our common council members about our sidewalk situation?
Well, I was thinking that through the bike ped master plan, we could potentially, we have, a certain number of public meetings in there. I think there's 6 public meetings. I mean, it's very robust as far as public engagement goes. And I thought we could have some of these sorts of conferences, as part of the bike ped master plan. Perhaps our consultant could even deliver. I mean, I know that some of the consultants probably already have this, they have their presentations, they have their PowerPoints all formed and ready to launch, when it comes to just basic principles.
And right, but I'd love to be able to segue that into the conversation about our sidewalk, ultimately resulting in our, our master plan or our secret plan, if you will, to
Well, that's no secret now because we're in public video.
to do a sidewalk district, to talk about how we're going to fund the sidewalk problem in Kingston. And there is it's a problem. It's a big problem.
That actually reminds me of a question I had. Is that ped bike master plan, do you anticipate that including recommendations on sidewalks in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think the idea of the bike ped master plan is to recommend the streets that would benefit. I don't know how to say this, that would best be the places to put bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure.
Okay.
Based on lots of different factors having to do with where are bike and peds walking and where are the main routes, and Brian might be able to say.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to provide an objective mechanism for prioritizing where the investments are going to bring forth the greatest value and benefit to the walking and bicycling public. And that's always been a concern of the city. They're great at getting grants, but when it comes to identifying the greatest need in terms of the corridor, that's tricky to an extent. And this will help solve that, I would hope, because we have limited resources and everyone thinks it's a priority. So where do you target the resources?
Right, that's the challenges now. I mean, even with some of the grants that we have received, I'm almost, I'm not that hesitant to apply for another infrastructure grant, but I'm a little bit hesitant about how do we make this choice? Where is the best place to invest walking and bicycling dollars in the city, and how is that decided? And I would love to have a plan that tells me, okay, this is the next street that you should focus on, for infrastructure funding.
Which also ties into our, ADA compliance plan.
Well, yeah, I would say, are we making sure that any of these align with bus routes and where people need to go to access public transportation? And are we only talking about major corridors? Because sometimes with bikes, I just feel that pedestrians get lost. We concentrate so much on bike paths, which are important, and I'm not trying to downplay them. But pedestrians, especially as we get older, with the disabled community, and even just small children, they kind of get left out, because it's like the assumption is you're on a bike or you're in a car, and that just isn't the case. If you've got to walk to a bus stop, you need a safe place to walk where you're not in fear of being run over by a bike or a car. So I just think we need to make sure that we do include the pedestrian side of this as well as bikes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the PED. I think we even are intentionally calling it the PED bike plan instead of the bike PED plan.
Yeah.
So PED bikes, pedestrians and bicycles, and it includes creating our ADA transition plan in the scope of work. And I would imagine that bus routes and connections to public transit would make a road or a pathway a higher priority project.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a metric that we use in our long-range transportation plan and our congestion management plan is walkability near multimodal facilities. So
okay,
this very much would help support it. And I agree with you, Claudette, completely. And that needs to be a metric. And if they're just in the RFP stage right now, I think there's a lot of stuff that can still be built into the final contract.
okay, yeah. For two reasons. I have low vision and I'm also the chair of RCAL, but just in general and in my many years in public works, it's always a hard balance between pedestrians and bikes. And occasionally I have to remember pedestrians need to have their voices heard. And sometimes they're not as vocal as the bike community, but we need to make sure that we understand that they're safe places for them as well.
Can I interrupt? This is Lorraine. I just had a question for I think it was Brian's voice. Walkability. Brian, would you mind repeating that? I didn't hear what you said about a priority is walkability near some kind of facilities. I didn't hear the word that you used.
Multimodal facilities, bus transit, essentially.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's important. So this sounds like this will be this is an exciting project. This is a good study.
Yeah, so I think I wanted to, I guess the day I met with Emily, I sent Greg a long email, right? Didn't I? And I think I said, I want to bring this before the Complete Streets Advisory Council. And do you remember what I said in that email?
I can look it up.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring it forward to you because I'd like us to think about how the advisory council could be. We don't have to have answers today, but how could we be involved in that education, both elected officials and the public?
Yeah, I'm willing. I think the council. I think my sense of the council is that we are greatly supportive and would be happy to participate in any way that we could be helpful in advancing this to the council and or to the public once it gets through that hurdle. This is and it's not to depart the text a little bit, or this typically would have been new business, but I think it's an appropriate time to talk about it anyway. The new administration and is about to do is talking about doing an infrastructure thing. And if they're going to do an infrastructure thing that relates to transportation, they've got Pete Buttigieg and Polly Totenberg as the two biggies in there now. And I don't know Mayor Pete, but I do know Polly Totenberg, and she is an advocate of pedestrians, of bicycles, she comes out of New York City. She was she inherited all the stuff that Jeanette Sadekhan did and advanced it without the fanfare, if you will, of Jeanette Sadekhan. So those are powerful advocates for non-vehicle, non-motorized, transportation, bicycles, pedestrians, transit. And so I think that bodes well for us, for cities and small cities. And Buttigieg comes from a small city. So I think there could be opportunities in a new transportation bill that we could really benefit from. So I think getting the Common Council to understand this a little more and getting the public to understand this will help us in the long run when the new transportation bill comes about, which is probably a couple of years away or a year away anyway, probably 2. But it's good to have the groundwork. If you have the groundwork in place, it makes it easier when the opportunities appear.
Yes.
If you have ideas, any of you, I'm speaking to all of you council members, about how we could do, even just at a brainstorming level, what kinds of complete streets workshops or what kind of educational opportunities would we want to provide, please send them to me and Emily and Greg, and then we can compile those as part of the brainstorm. And when we get this consultant on board, perhaps we can see what we might be able to develop as part of the public outreach.
That's a good, yeah, familiarizing them with these three concepts, I think is important. You're right. That's
Yeah.
good. We can help with that. So we should send stuff to you, or we can, yeah.
I would send it to Greg, Emily, and I, since Emily is managing the bike plan. But, you know, even if you have ideas, like, yeah, I don't, yeah, any ideas that you have, I just would love to hear them, because I think I'd like to see us open that conversation again.
Right.
You
And
know,
you know, with everybody home at COVID, walking a lot more than they used to, because what else are you going to do? They're experiencing some of the shortfalls of our transportation system.
And especially the disabled community, because you can't, you know, all of a sudden you're home, but you don't know where to walk because you're on a street where the cars are zooming by. You don't feel that you have a safe refuge. And I will say that, you know, I'm probably going to be doing a little bit better, but it's a little challenging when you realize the right of way is not very big, and you know you've got a car zooming past you on a street that might only should have 20 miles an hour, but they're doing 45. So you know, we need to think about that.
Which is, yeah, speed limits, another interesting topic. Well, the interesting part about it is the MUTCD, the federal MUTCD right now is undergoing a revision, and now is your opportunity to comment. And one of the things that they are doing is changing the criteria for speed limit determination. And in essence, moving it from regulatory to advisory, if you will. They call it a recommend, you know, so that's a huge change. In about time, I mean, it's about 20 years too late, but that's a huge change on their part.
Yeah.
Just for interest's sake. So if you're bored someday and you want to read the Federal Register about what they're proposing, give it a shot. It's not easy.
yeah, I mean, that sort of brings up for me, what are the lists of things that you think our community needs to learn more about? You know, not just complete streets design, but you know, there's a lot of discussions happening about, I mean, my neighbor came up to me and said, can you get them to change the speed limit on our street? You know, you work for the city. I'm like, oh, well, it's kind of a
well, you know, it's kind of interesting. I live on the corner of Clifton and Meade, and there was an argument. Somebody stopped somebody who was speeding on Clifton, and they had the whole argument in front of my house, which was like, you know, like, and it was maybe close to midnight, so you really didn't want to hear this. But yeah, they were screaming about this is a residential street and you're going too fast, and the person is going, I can go whatever speed I need to, and there's nobody out here, and who are you? I almost thought it was going to get to be a little bit more than them yelling back and forth. But yeah, there is an issue with speed on many of these streets, and yeah, that's something we need to take a look at if we can.
And right, and you get into, it opens up the whole door of traffic calming. You know, enforcement is always something that we talk about. Enforcement rarely happens in the city, but the police have other things that they're more focused on, which is understandable. But you know, how do we manage? Because the citywide speed's 30, right?
Yeah.
How do we manage? How do we get people to go 30? You know, that's the whole.
I know.
But that's part of the conversation. I think the complete streets conversation is all the users of the street. You know, bicycles, pedestrians, people with baby carriages, you know, delivery vehicles, service vehicles, and people driving cars too fast. You know,
right.
How do we all live together?
Yeah, I've noticed recently people with the, you know, basically motorized wheelchairs having to go out into the street because the snow on the sidewalks wasn't cleared adequately enough for them to use them.
Right.
And you know, part of this education should probably include property owner responsibilities for, you know, keeping the sidewalks clear, you know, clearing at the intersections so that you've got something more than, you know, a boot wide path to get to the sidewalk, which seems to be a perpetual problem around town, that they don't clear the snowbanks. You know, they just make a little path.
Right.
And
well, it gets even, you know, it's clearing snow off the sidewalk. I walk to the post office many days, and much of my walk is in the street. And there is sidewalks the whole way there, but much of my walk is in the street because they're impassable.
Right.
Well, the restating of what the homeowner's responsibility is for, their property line and what's in front of their house or in the side of their house probably needs to be done on a regular basis, because many homeowners are like, well, that's not my job. And yeah, it is. You must clean your sidewalks. And of course, there are some places that do enforce it, and they will fine you if you don't.
Yeah, and they should. Well, it gets, you look at one of my new pet peeves is the city-owned property that's been acquired for taxes and the sidewalks in front of those buildings, which are not addressed.
Is there some place that that's that
Yes.
way currently?
Yes, there are.
Oh, well, somebody should put in a complaint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's,
That's,
but
yeah.
that's,
Any other,
so I mean,
other
this all
thing
goes to
that-
I think this all ties together to an education thing, when we
Yeah.
talk about that. I mean, the education of what is a complete street, what are your obligations as a user of the street, what are your obligations as an abutter of a street? What is the,
Yeah.
it's a quality of life issue. Our streets, the most of the publicly owned real estate in the city is our street system.
Yeah.
So we should take care of it. But
but
that's
that's, Hurley Avenue where they put in the pedestrian crossing with the hawks.
yeah,
Those snowbanks aren't cleared. So, I guess on the upside, we haven't had many in school days,
right.
but the kids can't use that I won't call it controlled, but that safe crossing because the snowbanks are in the way.
Yeah.
So I think as far as sort of a conference or a workshop level of topics, please share them with us. And I think it'll be good just to have a list of brainstorm of, needs for education, and then we can see what we can do.
Right. Good. That sounds good.
And
That's
also,
great.
if you have ideas of presenters,
Mhm.
like I know Jeanette Sadek Khan charges
A lot.
$10,000, to come be a keynote speaker. But if there's other people that you know of, please share that information too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Jeanette's probably not the one. She's a little
No.
scary. She's a little scary too. She's a little scary.
We did back when we were organizing that Ulster County Active Transportation Conference, we did actually try to get her to be the keynote speaker.
Mhm.
And I think she literally charges like $10,000 or $20,000.
Oh yeah. Well, she's now a consultant with Bloomberg,
Yeah.
and Bloomberg Planning, and she's very good. I mean, Jeanette is, she is.
Yeah.
I commend her book to you guys. She's very good, but she's not cheap,
That's why.
and she is scary.
There's some
Scary to
backstory
get
you
things
need to tell
done,
me?
Bob.
Someday when after in the after time when we're in a bar, I'll fill you in on Jeanette.
Okay.
So that's a good segue into the next item, which is sidewalks. I know the status of the inventory. I mean, that's, I'm sure, on hold for now because of the winter, if nothing else. I don't know where we are with the inventory. Brian, I know you guys were fooling with that for a while.
It's done. The GIS inventory is done and the ADA assessment is complete. And that is, I don't know if we delivered it, handed it off necessarily to the city, which can be delivered at any point upon request. I would send that to David Stoss. We're working on putting up like a dashboard because we did the entire county.
Okay.
And not everyone has an ADA assessment completed, but all of our sidewalks are digitized, I think. So we're working on building a dashboard where just anybody could access those through our information services. I don't know where we are on that. That's not complete, but the data is readily available upon request.
Excellent. Congratulations and thank you. That's a
Wow.
huge step.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, don't thank me, thank the interns from SUNY New Paltz.
It's meaningful
They've
work. It's
helped us
meaningful
over
work
the
for them.
years.
Yeah, that's great work.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
And the first step in our ADA compliance plan is the inventory, and that's the first step. And we can now say that we've
know.
made progress and that's done if somebody points out where we are with that.
Yeah, we might find as it gets handed off to the consultant that gets hired for the pedestrian bicycle master plan, that there may be some deficiencies and to some extent. I think the some of the segment lengths that we used were that you then assign a score for the condition were probably too long. So you would have multiple conditions within one length. And then the field assessor would then have to just come up with a number, a best guess that does not adequately assess certain areas. So that's one deficiency that might arise. The other one was the point location of some of our ADA accessible ramps and the truncated domes at those ramps might not all be accounted for, but the sidewalk lines are 100% complete. I can say that, and they're very accurate. So we're in pretty good shape.
And condition's a moving target anyway.
Right.
So.
Is that, I'll call it a report. Is that report in a format that we can see?
No.
No.
Unless you have ArcGIS software.
Oh, okay.
We can get that though. I mean, I can print out the map and we colorize it. There's red lines, green lines, red,
Yeah,
bad,
I'd be curious.
green, good,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, we can make that available, John.
Yeah, and I think from the city standpoint, once we have that data, I'll probably make an ArcGIS online map that anybody could access, zoom in, zoom out to different streets. But that'll just be for Kingston. That'd be similar to what you're talking about with the dashboard. It would also be an ArcGIS online map, right, Brian? The dashboard.
Yeah, and we had an ArcGIS online map with the information at one point, but we weren't in the business of sharing it at the time. It was just for internal review purposes. So, yeah, it's all ready to go in that respect. So I'll just have David Stoss reach out to you, Greg.
Yep. And
we'll get that data transferred first of all. And if there's any other technical assistance, David's the person to contact.
Yep.
He did a lot of the supervision with the intern, and he's very familiar with ArcGIS Collector, which was used in the field to relay the data, which worked very well, by the way, as a new technology with any smartphone. So I'll have David get in touch with you, and we'll make sure that transfer is complete, so you have the info.
Great. That's good news.
Brian, can you just remind me, when you collected that information, it's just whether the sidewalk exists or not? Was there any sort of evaluation of the quality?
Yeah, and that's what I was referring to. So the first step is to first draw a line where a sidewalk exists. And that is 100% complete. So every sidewalk within the city and public rights of way is digitized in a GIS. The second step was to then assess the condition of those sidewalk segments, which I was referring to. And that was completed 100%. But the only potential deficiency is the length of the segment in some instances might be kind of long. So you have to assign a score where you might have one property has a brand new sidewalk, but the rest of the street is all garbage sidewalk. What score do you assign to that full segment? It's got to be an average, essentially. And so that's a deficiency. But then I think there's also points that show your, essentially your, I'm sorry, it's the sidewalk ramp to a crosswalk. Those should be on there as well, but I got to double check, and we may not have gotten everyone.
Okay. And so when you scored that, what criteria did you use? Is it a like 1 to 10 score? I'm sorry.
It's a 1 to 5 score,
Okay.
which was used statewide by the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations. with NICE input. So we decided, excuse me, some people playing video games. So we decided on that standard score format. I don't believe DOT, I think they use a 1 through 10 score, but this one was the most user-friendly, which is why the NICEAMPO group decided to use it.
Okay.
Could you send us the methodology for that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got all that material well documented.
And I don't think it's a deficiency necessarily that the segments go from curb ramp to curb ramp, because it should be the lowest common denominator, right? If you can't get past it on a wheelchair, it doesn't matter if the section beyond it is perfect.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Exactly.
Good, excellent. Well, thank you, Brian. That's all good news. The last thing I had on this was a correspondence about Bluestone with Historic Kingston. The Kingston Historic Kingston reached out to me to ask a question about Bluestone. I guess it was involved in I don't know if it was a general comment or it came up at their meeting. And I wrote back to them. She wrote me an email. I wrote an email back, and in essence explained the difference between old Bluestone and new Bluestone, and why old Bluestone is adequate, is why we're using it in historic districts and why we did not require it throughout the rest of the city, and the advantages of concrete over new Bluestone. And she seemed satisfied. We went back and forth a couple of times, and she was very thankful, and they understood it, and hopefully, and it kind of went away. I can send a copy of the emails if you're interested, but generally the comment was, they understand us use, what does the sidewalk code say? And I said, you have to use it in historic districts, and why not other ways? And I explained the difficulty with using it to meet traversability requirements and ADA requirements and long-lived. So they seemed satisfied, and they didn't come and storm the house or anything. Historic Kingston people are passionate about that, and that's good. I'm glad they are. But they were satisfied and seemed grateful that I took the time to explain to them.
So they didn't rise to the level of being scary yet.
I
Right.
would be interested in seeing that correspondence, just because it's coming up regularly. It's coming up on our Henry Street project. We had a lot of comments about Bluestone on Henry Street. So we have some decisions to make about that. And it's very challenging when it's not in a historic district and Bluestone is 3 times the price.
And it's not as good. I mean, I explained to them, the difference between, old Bluestone, when we had the quarries around here and you get large pieces that were thick and long lasting and well placed, and modern Bluestone, which you really have to set in concrete. And, you can't get the old Bluestone. It just isn't around anymore.
Right.
And so it really is not the same. It isn't the same thing as the old Bluestone that's in the old part of the city. So
This is Lorraine. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when we were having the sidewalk task force meetings, I thought that the way we left it, but maybe I wasn't informed, just didn't keep myself informed after the task force disbanded, that people who had Bluestone sidewalks outside historic districts would be given the option, once phase 2 went through, to pay for having their own Bluestone sidewalks, to make up the difference, in other words. Is that still part of the plan?
That is correct. That's still correct. It's still in the ordinance that way.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even people who don't have Bluestone can choose Bluestone. The way the code reads, you can choose either Bluestone or concrete. So,
okay.
if you're replacing your sidewalk as a homeowner. I think it also says that where there are long stretches of Bluestone, there will be an effort to, I forgot the exact language we use, but to analyze whether we can replace it with Bluestone or not.
I did remember that. Yes. Okay, that's great. Because one thing I'll say regarding the old versus the new bluestone is you're absolutely right, Bob. Do I have your name right? I hope so.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Yes.
about the difference between the old and the new. But many homes, including my own, have big slabs in the yards and pathways that can be used. And we've done that here in our sidewalks, years and years ago, to be able to take out pieces that are broken and use a piece from your own yard. So, that's old and in good condition. So there are ways to keep it both functional and, properly in alignment with the code, and also not have to use the poorer quality bluestone. So I'm glad that that's still in there in case people want an option and can do that.
And there's still, the intention is still to maintain a bluestone bank. I don't know what the status of it is at this point. I know there was not much bluestone in it last time I checked. I don't know where we are now with that, but the old bluestone saved so that it's not, sold, if you will. That's what happens to it.
I think we have quite a lot of bluestone in the bank. I mean, well, I don't know. I haven't been there in probably 6 to 8 months, but to me, it seemed like a lot when I went there. It's just the quality of it. It's, it's a lot, but it's cracked or it's broken or it's, I think that that's what makes it a challenge to then reuse it on a street project for a very great length of sidewalk.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree that the challenge with the bluestone bank is that there's really not enough good stock there for a big infrastructure project. It would be more for smaller sections. Like we use it when we did some work on the Pike plan, we had to replace some pieces. And so we had a contractor that could go there, could transport these slabs for a small project. It kind of falls in this in between where like a homeowner might not be able to transport the bluestone to use in front of their property. And also there's not enough there for a big contractor to use it on a sidewalk project. It's kind of in this middle space. And so not a ton of people use the bluestone bank at this point because of that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Maybe there is a way to incorporate into the final plan the option for homeowners who would need just a few pieces to be able to have who's ever doing their sidewalks maintain, if they're going to be paying a differential themselves, to use some of that bluestone, because if it's just going to go to waste because it's not able to be used in large scale projects, and a lot of it is cracked and, there's only so much that's usable, then that's something that if we go eventually get this approved might be a good thing to put in there. What do you think?
I think it's referenced the code, and the code did get approved. Your work did get approved. I mean, that.
Yeah. Yes, I thought that's true. I mean, as far as phase 2 and the funding part goes, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's not.
It'll be quite a while before we bring that phase 2 out. I don't know, Bob, have you had any discussions about doing that?
No. Yeah, no, I think given COVID and the, all the stuff that's going on with municipal budgets, I think it'll be a little while, but maybe it'll come from our education piece. There'll be a groundswell desire to do it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Eternal optimism.
Project updates. Everybody shut down, right?
Yeah. Right.
I went on the Hudson River the Brickyard Trail, and aside from the access from the beach, which has some significant flooding issues. I was down there the other day, and it was all underwater. But
the beach.
Yeah, the parking lot and the whole access to it.
Out at Kingston Point Beach.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that. I know the parking lot over near the softball field is flooded.
That was under too, as well as the roadway, as well as it was a lot of water. I was surprised.
Yeah, that sounds like even more than I've ever heard of.
But it's a nice walk. The Hudson River Brickyard Trail is a nice walk.
Yeah,
Beautifully done.
Yeah.
thank Greg. He did a lot of work on the construction inspection and
Oh, did you? What's a good? So the area where there's no trees and there's that big, is that spoil material from the brickyards?
Yep.
That's what I thought, cinder from when they cooked bricks.
Yep.
I'll bet. Yeah. Fascinating. It's an interesting walk.
Yeah, I guess there's a phase 2 for that project, right, Kristen, of trying to come up with some designs and funding for like rest areas along there.
yes. So we have another grant for it's a recreational trails program grant. I think it's in the ballpark of total project cost of $250,000. It's in my grants report that I'm putting forth to the council. So it does have a match that's required. And we are trying to figure out how we are going to manage that project. We could probably provide the match with city staff time, because I think it's in the ballpark of $40,000 or $50,000. So we're evaluating that, but it's kind of on ice right now.
Right.
Due to, just staff capacity right now is fairly limited. So we put it to be designed, I think, later this year with construction potentially next year.
Okay, good.
In 2020.
Is there any plan for an improved trail between the parking area and the Empire State Trail? Is that,
No,
that
there is
chipped
not.
trail there?
I fully acknowledge that is a gap. That's a gap in the system that when New York State DOT did not DOT, Greenway did the statewide planning, somehow that little section got missed between North Street and Delaware Ave and the end of the Hudson River Brickyard Trail on that street.
So in essence, you're on the street there.
Yeah, I mean, the official route is the Empire State Trail route is you come down the Kingston Point Rail Trail. We're still missing a little gap to the Trolley Museum. That's Kingston Point Rail Trail Phase 2. So we're missing that. So you can go on your bicycle up Garrigan Drive and then down Broadway and then back to Easter End, or you can walk down the sidewalk.
Yeah, I go down that sidewalk.
Yeah, you go down the sidewalk. So those are the kind of official routes. I don't think you're supposed to be on your bike on the sidewalk.
I walk my bike.
Adult, but
Very nice.
Thank you.
yes, Brian is walking his bike. So those are the official routes, and then you go on East Strand walking or bicycling, and then walkers are encouraged to take the trolley trail out to Rotary Park, and bicyclists go straight on North Street, and then that comes back together at Delaware Ave and North Street intersection, and then you're supposed to go on North Street up to the Hudson River Brickyard Trail.
Yeah, that's not so bad.
Yeah, it's just that's the official route, but we set up that situation now where people are supposed to park, if they want to drive to the trailhead of the Hudson River Brickyard Trail, then they can park at Kingston Point Park and go on that path over. But it's not ADA accessible.
No, it's not great.
No.
You're better off parking at the Ulster end.
Yeah. So there are gaps and issues in that system. We do have a little bit of a plan that was drafted by Alta Planning and Design. They were the firm that managed the whole Empire State Trail project. So we do have some draft ideas for North Street, improving the sidewalk there and putting in some bicycle facilities, but we don't have funding and we haven't moved forward with anything
And
yet.
North Street is a dead end street for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's not like it's scary.
Yeah. It is actually a little bit scary. You are, I mean, I know it sounds laughable, but it kind of is. Like I've gone to the Hutton, I forgot, one of their fairs or festivals or something with my daughter, and we rode bikes from my house, and it was kind of scary going just on that stretch because there were so many motor vehicles
Trying to get into the
coming to
parking.
the festival. They're all
Yeah.
from, out of Kingston, didn't know their way around,
Right.
drove really fast in their fancy cars.
Yeah.
So I actually was pretty nervous with my daughter.
Yeah.
Riding bicycles on that. So I think that there should be some better infrastructure there.
Oh, yeah, it'd be nice to finish it.
Yeah.
Good, excellent. You want to talk about Henry Street?
Sure.
You can say no.
Let's see, where are we with Henry Street? We did the public outreach and we got feedback through Engage Kingston. We are now, I think, planning on moving forward with the plan for 6-foot sidewalks. We didn't get a very large groundswell of people who were opposed to that idea. So I think we're moving forward with that, and the designers need to, it's still going to be quite a lot of time before we can construct that project because it's a New York State DOT project. So we're looking at a schedule of bidding it next late fall or winter for construction in 2022.
Okay.
So that's where we're at.
Good.
And we're still figuring out, some of the decisions regarding, there were a lot of comments about Bluestone. That's why I was interested in seeing your communication.
I'll certainly send it to you, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of comments about Bluestone being included in the project, but our project, I think it would be very challenging to include it with our project budget.
Right. Good. All right, new business. I don't have any new business. I don't know if anybody else has new business.
I just had one other question that I had sent to Greg. I was wondering, like, where are we with the adoption of NACTO guidelines? Because we for a long time, we've been discussing the city adopting complete streets guidelines.
Right.
Or design guidelines, and then we talked about, well, we don't need to spend a lot of time creating them, like some other communities, like I think some communities in Connecticut have created complete streets guidelines, because now we have them in the NACTO guidelines that are nationally.
We wrote a letter to the mayor and saying that it's our recommendation that the city adopt the NACTO guidelines. So we did it in two parts. We said we recommend they adopt them as the normal practice, and we also recommended that they join NACTO. Now, I don't know if he's going to do the second thing because that costs money, but adopting the guidelines, I think my memory is that they did, but Greg would know better than I.
Who's they? The council?
The city. No, I don't think the council needs to. You need to go by standards that are commonly used and accepted in the industry, and the NACTO guidelines are, and they cover the basis. I mean, we could probably have the council formally adopt them if we wanted to. But we did make that recommendation to the mayor.
Okay.
Is my memory at all correct? Do you remember
I think
that?
I remember seeing your letter, and I think that's what happened. I don't know what happened after that. So.
Right.
So I think that John ordered some NACTO guideline books. You guys have them now in the engineering office, Greg?
Yeah, well, I think it's the sort of thing where if it's online, only he can access it, but I'll have to see. He can print it out.
Okay.
But yeah, I've seen them kicking around.
And you can get them online. You can look at them online. Anybody can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be worthwhile to present them and have our common council adopt them. Because I think it would be a good for the education of the common council,
Mhm.
and also for, I think purely for educational purposes.
And I think also in this case, it would be an adopted standard that everybody is on board with. So it wouldn't be out of the blue if somebody says, oh, well, we followed the NACTO or NACTO guidelines, and they said, what's that? It would have been something that they definitely are aware of or should be aware of. And therefore, that's why you're going forward. I think you have a good point with them adopting it.
How do
Yeah,
we do that?
I think where it's come up more recently on projects is that there's sort of a hierarchy of what is safe bicycle infrastructure. And I'm sure that is the same with pedestrian. And I think that some, people are like, well, why don't you just put sharrows there? It's like, well, that's actually not as safe as some of the other options. So it really depends on what the goal of the infrastructure project is.
Right.
But I think it would be helpful for our council members to know kind of what infrastructure is recommended by the NACTO, the engineers who put that together.
There's also a liability issue. If the city formally adopts the NACTO guidelines, NACTO design standards, then you can say if there is a claim because of a crash, we did the right thing. We followed the generally accepted industry standards, the NACTO standards.
Right.
Whereas if it's all seat of your pants stuff and other, you're liable to write a big check. So there is a benefit to adopting it formally by the council. And it also, if we adopt the standards, we don't have to change them every time that, we just adopt the standards, and whatever the standards are at the time are what we go by. So, okay, how do we do that?
Well, I suppose we just check in with the mayor that he would be good with us presenting it to the council, and then Pat is here. I don't know if we would have, either Pat or liaison communicate, or, maybe Bob, you would communicate to the council that we would like to.
Yeah, we would be recommending to the council that they adopt the National Association of City Transportation Officials design standards. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And then I would suggest that instead of just saying like we recommend to adopt them, that we give a presentation to the council and give them like 2 months to review the guidelines and get an understanding of them.
Well,
You had a thought?
I'm not quite familiar with the way the Kingston City Council works, but in my days with dealing with the city council, it would be proposed that it go on the agenda. It would go back to committee for review. It would then come back for first and or second reading, and then a vote. Is that similar to what you guys do?
Pat was going to say something. Go ahead, Pat. You can probably speak with more authority than any of us on this.
Well, she's absolutely right. You would make a communication. Somebody would communicate with the council president, Andrea Short. You'd write it's called the communication that you would like this adopted. You would surely want to pass it past the mayor. He would put it to the lawyers. They would take a look at it, and then I'm sure the mayor would make a recommendation back to you to go ahead and do it, to make the communication. Once they make the communication, it would go to the committee, and if the committee passed it, then it can, and then it would go to the council for approval. It sounds like it's a no-brainer, like you said.
Yeah, it's a similar process. It's a little different in wording. Yeah, that's what I would do. Oh, I used to have to do. So.
Yeah, I think that what I was recommending is having, I would imagine this would go before our laws and rules committee.
If it's is it a code change? Are you changing the city code?
I don't think there's any standards in the city code.
Okay, so you're not changing the code, then it probably would go to law and rules, because that's where Andrea would make the decision of where to put it. But I would imagine it would probably go to laws and rules committee, and we would discuss it. The lawyers would come discuss it with us, And,
Right.
you know, we would then adopt it. The lawyers may say, you know, you don't want to adopt this because then we're going to be up against lawsuits or something like that. So, you know,
Exactly.
that's what's going to happen. And so there's a discussion, and then we vote in the Laws and Rules Committee, and then it's passed on to the council for the beginning of the month council meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what I was suggesting is that we might want to have 2 readings of it, 2 laws and rules meetings where we discuss it. Because it's not just the short, you know, the NACTO guidelines are dense, right?
Well,
You know?
well, what would happen in committee is we'd say, look, we would table it until we got more information on it, and then we would bring it back to committee the next month.
Okay,
There might be the possibility that a presentation would have to be made to, I guess you call it the Laws and Rules Committee, about what it would mean and what it would do after you have your council review. But
And we may,
then if they wanted another presentation to the entire council, then you could do it. But I would think that it would all start as committee work in your Laws and Rules Committee.
yeah, they may want to also have a, you know, a public hearing where, you know, we allow people to come and speak about it too. So if it's an issue that we think there's enough, you know, enough people who want to talk about it, or we would have a special meeting for that before we did anything also. So it could be a lengthy process, but I don't think that's a problem. It'll be a few months in the making. And like you said, it's more about education than anything. So take your time, teach everybody what it's about, and then going forward, that'll be healthier for everybody anyhow.
yeah, that's what I wasn't thinking of this as, I think anyway, we're using the NACTO guidelines when we're designing projects. It's more educating the council and the public about how are we designing our streets and how
Well,
we're
then
not.
that's
Yeah.
how you approach it. You approach it as an educational thing. So then you want the public hearing, you know, you want that public hearing maybe. So then maybe the Freeman will pick it up or whatever. So if you want to if that's the main purpose, then you want to go through the whole 9 yards, right? You want to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Couple council meetings, a presentation, as much media as you can get on it. You know, you want everything.
To explain the benefits as to why this is a good thing and how it's going to help us down the line. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the next step is for me to remind the mayor.
Sounds like it.
I think the next step is for you to check in with the mayor and ask if we can recommend it to the council, you know, to move
Right.
forward.
Yep. Okay, I can do that. Good. Announcements, communications, events, updates.
Bob, I have one other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I sent out an email the other day related to the traffic lights and the no turns on red. And I was wondering if anybody had taken a look at that and had any comments on that.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah. I don't know. I wonder how it's working in New Paltz. Have they been successful in New Paltz?
I don't know.
Did they do it?
No,
We don't
I think it's still in process down there.
Yeah.
Because I look at where I have the most trouble crossing the street in Kingston.
Mhm.
And in every instance, it's because of the right turns on red.
Right.
You know, they don't, you know, the motorists don't seem to care that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk that has a pedestrian signal that tells them it's okay to walk. You know,
Right.
they just keep moving. They don't even slow down in a lot of cases.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, it might be controversial. People might not like that, but who cares? But you know,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, you know, the motorists have had the priority for the past 50 years, and we're trying to change that. And of course, we're going to have some pushback. But
you
got
know,
to start somewhere. You know,
it goes to the it actually gets to I understand what you're saying and what New Paltz is saying, but it goes to an issue I think that's bigger than that. I go to Albany Avenue is at the end of the street where I live, and there's a brewery over there on the other side. And I walk over to the brewery, and there are two mid-buck pedestrian crossings by ARC and by up the road. And I use them. I walk into the street.
Yeah.
And sometimes people stop. And, it goes to the whole issue around, pedestrians and crosswalks.
Yeah.
And the fact that people don't stop.
And enforcement.
And enforcement. And
And
the law.
enforcement.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
I was just wondering, I got to the meeting, I get out of work a little later than this meeting starts, so I got a little late. I was wondering if you guys have, or maybe last time I didn't make it, you guys talked about the four-way stop signs now in the city of Kingston. I noticed a few good things about it. And the one good thing I noticed is there's less cars at the four-way stop. So it seems less dangerous to me, the fact that there's a four-way stop, because there's less vehicles around. It just seems less cramped, less congested at these four-way stops now. And that seems like a positive thing for one. And the other thing is getting across town. I know in your car, I know you guys, it seems to be smoother, and Kingston seems to be just a better, more easy to navigate as a driver in a car, and I feel safer too. And I think I feel the pedestrians are safer too, because I'm not trying to look around vans and buses and stuff like that to see people on bikes, because they're not there. They're gone already. There's only a few people so I can see better at the stops. I don't know how you guys are feeling about that.
Well, if the study, when they did it, the county paid for a study, Crichton Manning did it, and they predicted, and it's within the industry, it's traffic signals are not, people believe falsely that they are safer. They are not. Four-way stop is a safer intersection generally. The only reason you'd put a signal in is if you had a capacity issue and we don't have that in Kingston. So the placement of the signals historically didn't meet what they call traffic signal warrants. You have a series of warrants before you put in a traffic signal. None of them met that. So you're absolutely right. It is safer. It is less congested. And I think they're working pretty well. And Brian and the county guys get a lot of credit for that study. And our guys, the guys in the city, get a lot of credit for implementing it, for actually doing it. And amazingly, there wasn't a lot of pushback. There was a little pushback, but not a lot that I remember. I don't know what Kristen and Greg heard. But
the only thing that's been noted so far is that maybe one or two of them haven't been repainted to move the stop bars up closer to the intersection, whereas some of them have, and those are the ones that are working better, because with the four-way intersection with a stop, you can stop closer to the intersection than before. And so I think maybe at Pearl in Washington, the stop bar is still back a little too far. So in the spring, that'll move up and improve that intersection even more. But those are the only real complaints we've had, is around the repainting.
Yeah, another thing, Pat, is when the traffic signals, the array of traffic signals in the city of Kingston, I had a tour of the signal shop when I was on the Public Works Commission. And we had more, it was like a history lesson. We had traffic signals that were 70 years old, 60 years old, 50 years old. None of them were consistent. None of them, you can get in parts for half of them. They didn't operate well. So eliminating them is in my opinion, a huge.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I had one more comment. This is Lorraine about that. As the CAC Air Quality Chair, I just want to say that I've heard from people who live, let's say, on Washington Avenue for sure, that the vehicle idling has been so much reduced because the traffic signals are gone and no one is queuing up there for minutes at a time. So that's another great benefit.
We get an air quality benefit as well. So it's all around good.
Yeah.
That's rare. That's rare that you do something in government that's all around good.
Yeah, I mentioned this early in the meeting before Pat got there, but I'll repeat it for Pat's benefit, that I find it's much easier to cross those streets as a pedestrian with the stop signs than I did when the lights were there, because everybody's got to stop. And you don't have one direction of traffic, or one street moving at any given time. Everybody's stopping.
So back to your point about no rights on reds. You know, there's two ways to do that. We can, well, maybe more. One is to educate people that, you know, you stop because there's pedestrians in the crosswalk and you shouldn't run them over. The other is to prohibit rights on reds where there's significant pedestrian volume. I don't know. People, that would probably need the Common Council's approval to prohibit the rights on reds. So that would mean that John would have to do a study, which I'm sure he'd be happy to do as the first step in that process.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that came up, I read that, John, and the thing that came up for me is how would this work with the level of service? Not that I love level of service, right? But how would doing that, like, let's just say you did that citywide, how would that impact traffic flow throughout the city? You know, and I'm thinking about all of the traffic signals that we redid or that we're redoing on Broadway. That was all based on a extremely complicated, well, to me at least, traffic signalization study that included all of the turning movements, and then, you know, ultimately ended with a level of service grade, or, you know, an expected improvement or decrease in improvement of the level of service. And so that's just the thing that came up for me. So I'm not sure how that would be implemented, if it would be implemented on a intersection by intersection basis, or, you know, I can't imagine that we could do that citywide. But I could be wrong.
I still go back to it's a level of education and enforcement. Right turn on red does not mean you turn right willy-nilly without stopping to see if it's safe to turn right on red. Yeah. It doesn't mean, oh, red light, immediately turn right. And I think that over time, it's like people at stop signs that think, oh, the rolling stop. It's like, I'm not supposed to stop. It's a suggestion. I think we really need to get back to more enforcement. I know that that's difficult, and more education, because you can't, I don't know if you can put a prohibited right turn on red at every signal, and I do agree it would have to be studied, but I just think that we're going to have to start doing more basic education as to what right turn on red really means.
Yeah, I saw it as the, you know, the congested parts of town, you know, uptown, the Broadway corridor, where you've got a fairly high volume of pedestrians, and, you know, from a pedestrian safety and a traffic calming standpoint, no right turns on red would be a good thing. You know,
yeah,
citywide, probably not a good idea. You know?
for Broadway, it would change the level of service, which I'm not. I just want to be really clear that for me personally, the level of service is not as important, because I think it's important for bicyclists and pedestrians to be safe over cars getting through fast. But level of service is important to a lot of people and a lot of most motorists. So if we were to do that on Broadway, it would certainly change the level of service. But and we might have some no right turns on red. I'll have to look again at the
Well,
plan. But
with the change to one travel lane in each direction, you're not going to have a whole lot of cars that are going to be able to make a right turn on red anyway, because they're going to have through traffic and right turn people in the same lane. So I don't think it would have a huge impact on level of service.
Well, yeah, you'd have to study it. If you're going to do it, you'd have to do a whole study of what is it going to do, which, you know, I personally would prefer to try education first, and then if we still are frustrated, look at the study, and then the prohibition option.
well, we can certainly wrap that into the Broadway education campaign. I think we have to. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the most intense conflict point,
right.
are at the intersections and where bicyclists and pedestrians are going to be walking. However, it's all going to be signalized on Broadway, which is different than, well, it's different than Greenkill. You know, there's going to be bicycle signals at all of the intersections on Broadway,
Right.
as well as ped heads.
Yeah.
So it's all signalized. I'd have to ask the engineers how the right turns on red work.
I would guess on the bike lane side, they're going to be prohibited. You're not going to be able to get out there between the parked cars and the bike lane and it's going to be a difficult thing to do a right turn on red.
No.
Yeah, I'll have to ask them.
And you know, Greenkill doesn't have traffic signals, but it's got traffic signs. And so the question is, will bicyclists follow traffic control devices? You know, we know of one that did not.
Yes, we do.
And I see others that just blow through all the stop signs on the
Yeah.
bike lane on Greenkill. No, it's-
And I know on my bicycle, I've never passed a traffic control device. Or a pedestrian. I always wait for the walk signal too.
Well, and I don't know, this would be a question, is you know, an actual signal going to be followed more than just a stop sign?
I don't think we know.
Yeah, but I mean, somebody must know. I wonder if there's data from New York City.
Yeah, it's those guys delivering food on the electric bikes. I'm sure they stop all the time.
Yeah,
Right, but do they stop at the signals? I mean,
I would guess they don't.
from what I saw, they don't.
no?
Yeah, I would say.
A lot
they
of
don't.
them blow through, but
Yeah.
they've got a lot of cops down there that'll grab those guys too.
Right, right.
And
They're just trying to
you know,
make a
cite
living.
'em.
We're picking on them. They're just trying to make a living. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else got anything that we need to talk about?
I was just saying we'd have to revisit that one next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
just
guess-
want to keep it out there because I'm kind of, you know, I guess I'm hot on that issue
yeah, well,
because I do spend a lot of time on foot and on bicycles in Kingston, and it's perpetually a problem
Yeah.
having those right turns on red.
It is, no, it's definitely an issue. I'm not disputing that it is. I agree. I just think we need to work on more enforcement and education.
Yeah, I would think trying to add something else to John's plate right now, as far as the study goes.
not going to be well received.
Not gonna happen.
It's winter, it's slow, right?
No, it is not.
My question, Kristen, is that something that can be folded into the ped bike master plan? You know, if it's trying to determine where we have facilities, can it determine, like, could we consider that a facility, a no right turn on red almost? Treat it like that. See where we have a lot of pedestrians and we have right turns on red. And if that is something that needs, like, there are specific intersections that need to be studied as part of the ped bike master plan. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it potentially could be like a recommendation, of the Ped Bike Master Plan, to study it further. I don't think the study itself could be part of the Ped Bike
Right.
Master Plan scope, because,
At least identifying those intersections.
yeah.
Right, good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's a good idea. All right, anything else?
I mean, it's Ped Bike Master Plan.
That's right. I'll never say that. I'll never say
Not
other
bike
way.
ped.
Ped bike, Ted, it's ped bike.
Ped bike,
Ped
okay.
bike.
Okay, given that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Uh,
second. Okay, all in favor, done. I don't think you can not be in favor of that. I think that's one of those.
Good meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Hey,
you, everybody.
have
I'll
fun.
share some
Bye-bye.
emails.
Happy Valentine's Day.